November 15th.
So moved.
Second.
Motion
Mayor, I
and
abstain.
okay. There's a motion and a second. We'll have a roll call vote.
Alderwoman Ross. Alderman Piper. Alderman Harris.
Abstain.
Alderwoman Lynch.
Aye.
Alderman Miller.
Aye.
Alderman Robinson. Alderman Wicker.
Aye.
That motion passes. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. Item 8 is the personnel docket.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That motion passes. Next is item 9, the approval for Luke Zamilis, sports management major at Ole Miss, to intern for the Parks and Recs Department during the spring semester. It's a 400-hour unpaid internship over a minimum of 10 weeks. We just need approval for the board to authorize that.
Mayor, I'll make make a motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
So motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That motion passes. Can I have a motion on the donation docket?
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the donation docket.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. Item 11, and I want to just draw some attention to this. We kind of just do this as part of the normal thing, but it's the approval of AERC's donation of architectural services for the new animal shelter in the amount of $1,706.25. I just want to remind everyone that Doug and his staff have been doing this work on the animal shelter at no cost to us, and it's mounting up to a lot of money that they've donated to us in their services. So if I could get an approval to accept that donation.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
So motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. And that motion passes. Item 12 is the request to donate the old water plant aerator located at the water plant at Loescher Street and Church Street to the town of Coldwater. They would incur all the cost of dismantling and removing it.
So moved.
Second.
So motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. Item 13 is to approve the Public Works Director to sign a 3-year agreement with LB Technology for GPS for all of the Public Works trucks.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve. Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. Next, item 14, we had to do an emergency repair of the number 4 water well at East Parkway with Mid-South Water totaling $68,675. We need to approve that as an emergency repair, and Joe Frank could explain it if y'all need an explanation.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
I yield.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That motion passes. Item 15 is the resolution to remove Scott Worsham as the visa user and replace with Police Chief Shane Ellis.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Item 15 passes. Next are our planning item agendas. Austin, if you would come up and start with number 16, the Robinson and Highway 51 C4 rezoning.
All right. Project number PL 1639 is a zoning map amendment request to go from R12 single-family residential to C4 planned commercial. This is located on the west side of Highway 51, north of West Robinson Street, on the corner of 2165 and 340 West Robinson Street. There's 2 homes currently on the site. Ben Smith with IPT Solutions is representing Pruitt Holdings, who's the current owner of the property. This has been tabled at the last 2 Board of Aldermen meetings, and so it's in front of you tonight for a final decision. The property is 1.16 acres, and as I said, it's currently zoned R12, and they're requesting a C4 planned commercial district. The surrounding zoning districts are R12, C2, C4, and R12, as shown on the attached zoning map in your staff report. And the future land use map in the comprehensive plan identifies this subject property to be single-family, low-density dependent. And what this means relative to this zoning tonight is there is this clause in this provision of the comprehensive plan where non-residential land uses, which is what this is, should be encouraged within residential neighborhoods only when they're necessary convenience activities, and a smaller service area, generally not exceeding 5,000 square feet. And so the applicant took that and developed a site plan and a tree survey, basing his application around that clause in the comprehensive plan. And so once you consider that and what the application for C4, it is in general keeping with the comprehensive plan. There's a description of the C4 district in your staff report and what's required and what it's most appropriately identified as. And the purpose of this C4 is basically a PUD for strictly commercial uses. And the plan did list 13 uses by right and did provide a site plan, like I said, with the landscape buffers and setbacks as it would be dictated. It was heard by the Planning Commission, and it received a negative recommendation. They turned it down, but the applicant did volunteer to limit the hours of operation to foot traffic to 10 p.m. and strike 2 of the uses on his own accord. And he's brought an application tonight to continue striking some of those uses and then showing some building imagery. The building imagery in the back of your staff report, you can see some example buildings from South Haven, is what he's agreed to model the architecture off of based on some comments what the Planning Commission had on wanting to know what the finished product would look like. And so he's volunteered to model the architecture off of the renderings in your staff report. The applicant provided the answers to the following criteria for discussion, which are our legal criteria for approval or denial, is how this proposed amendment would conform to the general development plan, why the existing zoning district classification is inappropriate or improper, and what changes in the area have supported this change. And so there's reasons that the applicant has listed in your staff report for that criteria. There are proposed motions to approve and deny in your staff report, and the applicant is available and has brought a supporting document of some of the uses that he's proposing to strike and some additional imagery if you'd care to see so. So I'm available if you have any questions, and the applicant's here as well.
Are there any questions from this board for Austin before the applicant's representative gets up to speak?
Austin, on the surrounding commercial properties, are there restrictions that are similar to what we're seeing here, or are the restrictions that are being proposed greater than what the commercial properties have surrounding it? Does that make sense?
There was a similar concern with a Fairway Mortgage site southeast of this site. Similar concerns of architecture, and there was a concern about outdoor music and loud music, and that was one of the conditions of approval, that there was no outdoor loud music.
Okay.
Any other questions for Austin? Okay, did you want to call the applicant up?
Mayor and Board, I'm Ben Smith, 2700 Stonebrook, Nesbit. I also made the presentation to the Planning Commission, and like I say, it wasn't negative. We agreed at that meeting, before I pass this out, to strike certain uses and only come up with a list of permitted uses. C4 district, you come up with your own uses that's going to be permitted. And I have that list tonight. You're welcome to go over, and we'll go over those lists. I think the question was asked, was this zoning more or less than what's around it? Across the street at the northeast corner and the southeast corner of this intersection, both of those are zone C2. You zoned that. The city of Hernando zoned those 2 corners C2. If you were to look at C2, you'll see it allows just about anything you can think of at those 2 corners. Of course, right now there's a strip center there, and there's a house that's being used, I think, as an insurance or a financial institution. But those 2 corners were zoned C2 by you. The property to the north of this corner was also zoned commercial by you at one time. The current occupant requested it to be down zoned. So at one time, the 2 corners across the street and the piece of property to our north was zoned commercial. This C4, I want you to look at the uses that are going to be permitted on this site, and you'll see that they're very similar to an office zoning. So it's a very mild zoning that we're applying for. We went ahead and with the expense, we went out and located the trees. If you notice, there's some beautiful oak trees on that site. On the site plan, which I'll hand out, I'll go ahead and hand this out if I could.
Austin, you want to hand them out for him?
This is my opinion, but I think the reason we had a negative vote, we could not, at that time, I did not have the pictures of these buildings that you'll see at the back of this handout at that time. We are agreeing that whatever is going to be built there will look similar to the style and architecture of those photographs that you have at the back. The site plan on the front sheet, if you'll notice, we've located all the trees and there. And it's only required to have a 20-foot landscape easement along Highway 51. We increased it to 30 feet, the buffer on the front on 51, because we were able to save more trees with that 30-foot buffer than a 20-foot buffer. We did decrease the buffer to the rear of the lot to 20 foot. But if you'll notice, all those trees, the 20-inch pine, 20-inch pine, all those pines are within that 20-foot buffer. So the buffer will be there at the back. We have agreed to also to put along and that's Mrs. Whitfield's side, we've agreed to put an 8-foot masonry fence at the rear of this lot to buffer her house from this site. The two driveways are shown where they'll be located. We moved the driveway up Highway 51 away from the traffic light to give better traffic control. We will be utilizing the same driveway that the little house on Robinson. So we'll have two ways to enter and exit the site there. We've done so much, I think, on this site to make it agreeable. We've listened to everybody, and we've come up with what we think is a commercial zoning on a commercial corner that you can be assured of that there's not going to be anything there that would be permitted in a C2 zone. If you go to second sheet, here's the permitted uses: bakery, barbershop, medical office or clinic, banks, financial institution, excluding loan or check cashing establishments. Exercise center, floors, gift shop, offices, retail shops, veterinary clinic, excluding outdoor kennels. Food services is part of a retail center, and then any other permitted accessory uses in a commercial zone. There are no conditional uses.
So from what we have in our staff report, it looks like you have 2 fewer uses on this sheet you're giving us and requesting now.
Correct.
So you've excluded the daycare facility and nursery school as options.
That's correct. It was at that meeting, they were concerned about it. We agreed to allow those, so we've taken it off the list. So
What were the concerns about those two?
Nursery,
Is it the, morning and afternoon traffic?
I think it
would
was the
guess?
morning and afternoon, the traffic that you have for a nursery there.
Don't you- I do feel like exercise center would kind of fall into that same sort of category. It seems like they're busier in the mornings and the afternoons.
My experience with exercise, I get there at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, then after work, but I don't know what to, I got Mr. Pruitt here, we'll ask him, but also we agreed that if you look at those 4 photographs at the back, one of them's not a photograph, but any structure to be constructed will be in conformance with the 4 structures attached as photos of existing structures built in Hernando and South Haven as to style and appearance. They will look like those buildings. They will have the residential look. The roof will be asphalt shingles. There won't be any metal roof, nor flat roofs. There'll be pitch roofs, architectural grade shingles. The block wall, we're going to put the block wall at the Whitfield property line, and we're saying that no landscape buffer will be required along the north property line. The reason being that property at one time was commercial, and he chose on his own to reduce it down to residential, and I think it's unfair to ask Mr. Pruitt put a buffer and a wall or whatever up now to protect him when he voluntarily reduced his zoning to residential.
So as long as it stays within these guidelines of the way these buildings look, I mean, we just want it to fit the historic district. You know, at least roof lines and building materials and things like that, just so it doesn't look like it's, doesn't fit in the area.
Yeah, we're committing that they'll look something similar to these, yeah. We're not in the historical district. We're outside the historical district.
Well, it's like bordering it. It's right there.
Yes, it is. Correct.
Mr. Smith, what are going to be the hours of operation? I think y'all mentioned that earlier. What did y'all agree on?
We never really agreed to hours of operation at that meeting. There was a discussion about it. We do have in here as one of the permitted uses is a food service. If it were to be a pizza shop or something like that, hours would be obviously be after 10 o'clock. So we did not agree to any hours of operation.
Be willing to do that tonight?
If it's reasonable, I think so. But I don't think there's any disagreement. That is a commercial corner, and you're going commercial all the way up to Parkway now. You got a C-store that you're approved up there. So the growth commercially for commerce is full. There's no vacant places. So, and all the developments occurring north of Hernando, around the Nesbitt area, is going to see more and more commercial growth. So this is a commercial corner. So I don't know what else we can do. We've saved the trees, we've increased the buffers, we give you a list. And by the way, C4, there will not be anything approved except what's on this list that you approved tonight.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Smith at this time before I call on the citizens that want to speak?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Are there any citizens or other people that want to speak on this topic? Yes, sir. Good.
Good.
So I'm the owner of the previous commercial property, which is now residential, and most of you probably know it's actually a 1912 house. It's a historic house that's not necessarily in the historic district, and I think I've done a lot of research on it, and the reason that particular side of Robinson and 51 is special is because virtually all of that actually was part of the dairy farm, which our house was the farmhouse for. And that's not really recorded very well, but in fact, the house I think we're talking about here was built in 1964, and it actually is sitting more or less in the actual front yard. Our house actually faces this way. You know, as far as to the zoning itself, I have some personal feelings because I think that putting a commercial property in a swath all the way to Memphis Street, which was always a farm, right, and it's probably good that we have a lot of residences, Northwood Hills, all of those were subdivided. And that's good, but I don't necessarily think it is good for everybody to have another commercial business on that corner. And I recognize exactly what he said, that the south corners are a little bit different, and so are the east corners. Remember, those were never part of the farm. That area, in fact, I believe the church across the street from us used to be a junkyard, if I'm not mistaken, so we've definitely improved things on that side. But as to the specifics of the plan, one of the things not mentioned, and I don't know how many people would know unless you're familiar with the property, but basically at the, I guess I would say the northeast of his property, you know, our dairy barn, which you may not even realize is there, is basically right up on the property line. It's not like it is today where you have a good clearance. It's literally on the property line. So is our antique 1930 storm shelter, which is actually, you know, down the hill. I'm sure they know where I'm referring to. And so if they move the driveway closer to us, I have no idea what to do with that storm shelter, but it is something from the 30s that goes way back in time, and I'm kind of averse to having a driveway move closer to ours. And I'm sure y'all know that we get lots of traffic, people turning into our driveway anyway, and having a business that moves its driveway closer is not going to help that. But, I think the bigger point to me is I don't know that everybody is familiar with the general history of that particular area, and I would like to just say that leaving that as a viable residential property makes more sense to me. Of course, I've been a lot closer to the history here. And, given the growth that we're seeing everywhere across the area, I don't know that from the city's standpoint, there's any real justification to allow commercial there, and we have all sorts of more viable areas. And the last thing I really wanted to add is, it is a traffic problem. It's a very big traffic problem. In fact, I joked at one of the meetings I came to earlier, it takes me longer to get here at 6 o'clock than the meetings usually last. But on the other hand, I'm not really sure I've ever seen a traffic problem that got better by putting a commercial property right in the middle of it, right there at a busy, intersection with people turning right, people turning left, people flying down Robinson. The day that I went and got some signatures, which were presented, and they're in the minutes of the Planning Commission, just about get run over by people, flying through that light when it's green. I have a hard time myself as a lifelong Hernando citizen. I really have a hard time understanding how this is in our best interest. There's cases that can be made for a lot of different properties along some of the major thoroughfares. This one, to me, does not feel like it's vital, nor does it serve the long-term interests of the community. I think we all could look through some of the previous things that have been zoned commercial over the last several decades, and we could probably find favorite ones that we really think they probably made a mistake. And I would just say that this is one that I think that if you're sitting here 20 years from now, I think that you probably would look at and think to yourself, well, maybe that wasn't the best way to move forward for the city. Especially since I would also call out the Fairway Mortgage Building. It is not precisely the structure that was left behind by Ms. Wadsworth. It is substantially the same structure, though, right? And we're talking here about basically demolishing, which, you may not like houses from the 60s, but it is a vintage house in and of its own right. And we've had notable people who've lived in that house from this community, and we're talking about ripping down a perfectly viable residential house so that we can build something that is more architecturally sound than the real deal, which is sitting there. So I just would leave it at that, and I hope you guys can come to a wise decision. I'm just giving you my viewpoint, being a neighbor next door.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Tippett.
All right.
Is there anyone else here that wants to speak?
Yeah, I got something to say.
Yes, sir, if you'd come up.
Good evening. As I respect his opinion about talking about historical Hernando, living here his whole life, I want to tell you that my family has been here since the 1800s. I remember sitting across Mr. Battle's beer joint and sitting with my grandma and watching the airplanes fly over behind the beer joint. And during that time, she would get mad at me and say, "I'll go get a cheeseburger over there." She said, "No, you can't do that. It's a beer joint." So I'd sneak down there and get me a cheeseburger, same bar, same place. So my great-grandmother was a crisp. So she started the store right there. It's a store still standing there. It was a hotel. And she sold stuff out of the store and hotel. The hotel's gone now, but the store's still there. So as he talks about historical, he's been here his whole life in Hernando. I've been here my whole life. My family's been here their whole life. I love Hernando. I respect Hernando. I'm sickening of Horn Lake, how it looks and how it's become. Hernando is the only place that I know that you can go downtown, drive around the square, and actually see the same place I grew up at. So I'm very passionate about Hernando. My father is too. And so we talk about we're going to put a beer joint there, we're going to do this, do that. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to make sure whoever we sell this property to, they do what they're supposed to do. I don't know if y'all know we run a nice business. We have a lot of people, trucks clean, and we run a lot of employees. And so we're not going to let somebody come to Hernando and take away from Hernando what it is. It's historical. It's still original. It was when I was a kid. And that's who we are. We're not here to, are we going to make money on the property? Yes. Did we buy it for a financial gain? We sure did. But we're going to make sure whoever gets it does what they're supposed to do. You dang right. So we talk about we've been here this whole time and this storm shelter and all that. I've been here since the 1800s. My family has. I used to watch the airplanes fly. I used to sneak down there and get a cheeseburger from Battle's Beer Joint. So we talk about historical. I love Hernando. I love the way it looks, and I want to keep it the same way. But at the same time, it is a commercial property. It needs to be developed, and we need to move forward. Now, Comparing to Horn Lake, no, I would not have nothing in Horn Lake. I'm very disgusted. I went to Horn Lake High School, and I am very disappointed how Horn Lake looks. But Hernando is still the same way it looked when I was a kid. And that's what we're gonna do, period. And I don't care, they can come in and offer $10 million, it don't matter. We're going to keep Hernando the way it looks. So I assure you, whoever buys that property, they're gonna make it right. And that's all I gotta say.
Okay. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Pruitt. Anybody else like to speak? Any other questions or comments from the board?
I would like to have a discussion about the hours of operation. I think that's kind of important from talking to those residents, if Mr. Smith would let me know what he thinks is reasonable there.
I have a question maybe for Austin while they were talking.
Yeah. go ahead.
The wall on one side, on the west side, but not on the north side of the property, what are the requirements there?
There is a design type for a masonry wall where you can offset it with brick, split face CMU. There's several different things they could choose from, but the 8-foot wall, I think is something they worked out with the Whitfields as an additional layer for the buffer on the western side.
So that's
Yeah.
additional but not required?
Correct.
What is required? Because he said he wasn't going to put one on the north side, but what would be required?
It's a
What's-
type 30 buffer, maybe 35, I don't have it in front of me, but there's a bunch of different options in a type 30 buffer. You can do a berm with landscaping, you can do a wrought iron fence with landscaping in the middle where the wrought iron, you can see through it, or you can do a 8-foot solid masonry wall. He's just stipulated the masonry just to be specific on that side.
Also, one more, would a marijuana distribution facility be considered a medical office or clinic?
No, sir, we got it defined in our use chart, so it'd have to be in there.
And it's too close to the church probably too.
Making sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Smith?
What do you think's reasonable, Mr. Smith? 6 o'clock?
Mr. Pruitt said he would agree to 7 to 11. 7 in the morning, not open till, and not open after 11.
Any other discussion or questions? And I think since Mr. Smith has presented it, the 11 uses he presented are what's being discussed now, not the 13 that were in the staff report.
Right. So with hours of operation from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Yeah, we agree to that. I hope I made this packet complete enough that you can make this part of the record as far as the site plan is concerned and the uses. We'll add the hours of operation. If there's any other thing you can think of, we'll add to this document, and this will be made part of the record. Where's Austin? This could be made part of the record. Okay.
Alderwoman Lynch, were you saying something else?
No, I was just, the changes, the major changes that have occurred, I mean, I see your list. I don't really feel like those are major changes, but anyway, that's just thought.
Well, I think, I mentioned, I think the two major changes is that the city itself said the other two corners are highway commercial that's there right now. And if you compare those two corners, they're right next door to residential houses, both of those commercial uses. So this one's not any different. Ms. Whitfield lives next door. Across the street, there's residential up against the C2 zoning there. So, and Mr. Tippett made the case, he says the traffic's so bad. He made that case that it took him longer to get here than it did somewhere else. So, and the presence of a traffic light indicates that there's a lot of traffic at that intersection. People are getting off, as you well know, and off the interstate, instead of going down Commerce, they're turning north and getting on Robinson Street and shortcutting through. So that's becoming more and more of an intersection. So, and he's correct. There will be more traffic from this. Whoever goes in there is going to produce more traffic than if it was a family living there. But I don't think in any way you would ever say we're not going to approve Starbucks on Commerce because there's going to be more traffic on Commerce, which is too much now, so. So we're asking if you would to approve it. I think it's, we presented the proof here, and they've agreed to a lot of things that was not previously agreed on the other two corners, so. And you got Mr. Pruitt's word, so,
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
thank you.
Any other comments or concerns from the board before a motion is made? If not, could I have a motion?
Mayor, I make a motion to recommend approval to the Board of Aldermen of a rezoning requested by Mr. Ben Smith, IPD Solutions, representing Pruitt Holdings, owner of properties of a 1.16 acre parcel of land from its current zoning in the R12 Single Family Residential District, medium density, to the C4 Planned Commercial District, consisting of parcel numbers 308613001, 0001800, and 308613001, 0001900, is located on the west side of Highway 51 and north of West Robinson Street, more specifically 2165 US Highway 51 South and 340 West Robinson Street in Section 13, Township 3 South, Range 8, based upon the following findings, and include items 1, 2, and 3 in the motion.
And are you approving, or in your motion, are you talking about the hours of operation that were stated earlier?
If it needs to be, yes, we can put that in the motion. I think it's a little premature because we don't know what's going there.
What about the additional items as part of the motion to approve that's in Mr. Smith's report that he handed us? Those 4 items.
They should be part of the motion. You're referencing the ones that were excluded, correct?
Yes.
Yes, that should be made part of the motion.
Not the exclusions, but the additional items 1 through 4 about the roof, architectural, asphalt shingles, and a block wall constructed, the 8-foot wall on Ms. Whitfield's lot.
As part of the motion, I will include the page in the handout that lists the 11 permitted uses and including the conditional uses or none, and then the 4 additional items as part of the motion as approved.
There is a motion on the table.
Second.
Does that include the hours of operation or not?
From the person giving the motion and the second, are y'all including the hours of operation in that motion and second?
Yeah, we'll include the hours of operation.
That's understood in your second as well? And those hours, as I heard them, were 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. Okay? There's a motion and a second. We'll have a roll call vote.
Alderman Wicker.
Aye.
Alderwoman Ross.
Aye.
Alderman Piper.
Aye.
Alderman Harris.
Aye.
Alderwoman Lynch.
No.
Alderman Miller.
No.
Alderman Robinson.
And the motion passes 5-2 with a supermajority vote that was required. Okay, we'll move on to item 17. Thank you.
All right, the next application, PL 1674, is a request for final plat approval of 1 lot and 4 acres. The property is located on the west side of Mount Pleasant, south of Riley Street, in Section 7, Township 3, Range 8. Bob Barber, representing Orion Planning and Design, representing the owner of the property, is the applicant. This final plat approval is currently zoned, this lot in this final plat approval is zoned R12, medium density residential. The proposed use for this piece of property is for a church, which is an allowable use in R12. The surrounding zoning districts are listed in your staff report, and the future land use plan shows this as residential, single-family, low density, so this application is in conformance with the comprehensive plan. The standard subdivision comments are listed in your staff report, and this was tabled at the last meeting. They eliminated the easement on the north side and deeded it back to the property owner to the rear. So the previous application was 4.3 acres. This is 4.03 acres. There's a proposed motion in your staff report, and this was heard by the Planning Commission, who recommended approval as written. And if approved, we would bond any associated improvements until construction of the church, including a possible lane improvement and a sidewalk. I'm available if you have any questions.
Is there anyone here to speak on this issue? Anyone on the board have questions or concerns for Austin? If not, is there a motion?
Is there a residence back there?
Behind it.
Behind it?
The spot you left, that was left out in the north part of the property, is going to have to redo the driveway. That's where they're going to realign the driveway for the current residents to be.
Okay.
Anyone want to offer a motion?
Make a motion to approve with the staff recommendation.
Second.
The motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. And that motion passed. There are some transportation alternatives grant money available through the Metropolitan Planning Organization. And Austin came up with an idea of something to apply for that he thinks we might could get funded, so I'll let you lead off with that.
Yes, sir. The recent call for applications for the TA funds for transportation alternatives, they fund bike lanes and multi-use paths, anything non-vehicle related they can help fund. And so the call for applications came about a month ago. And in looking through the RAISE grant, which we unfortunately didn't get, there was a section of the RAISE grant for bike lanes on Mount Pleasant Road. And with the $400,000 available, the current budgeted amount for that section of bike lanes is about $190,000. And so I talked to the MPO, and they thought that was a pretty good amount for an application. And these are 80-20 cost shares, and so 80% federal and 20% local. And so we're looking at about a $40,000 local match, which I would plan to ask for in the next budget cycle. And so generally speaking, the bike lanes currently end at Riley Street, and there's a pinch point as you come around the curve going. And so what this would do is add bike lanes in the pinch point and then get bike lanes all the way back to Commerce Street. So the section would be complete from the entire section of Mount Pleasant to get to the linear park, and then also to Dilworth under the tunnel via Riley. So it would complete the section, and I feel like we have a great shot, but tonight's purpose is just to ask for permission to apply for the funds.
Won't be any upfront money, this only if we get it, where we'd have to
Yeah.
make a motion.
And I think there's a couple of Bicycle Club members here just here to show their support. So, were you about to
Yeah,
make a
I mean,
motion?
Well,
it's
saying
kind of
that-
dangerous right there, where
It
it
is.
just kind of ends and then it's just nothing there. I mean, you'd like hit a biker.
Did I interrupt your motion?
Well, I just say I run that way every morning, so it's pretty rough right there at
Yeah.
Riley Street, so.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve to apply for the grant.
You're saying the time.
The motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That motion passes. And, all right.
Hey, the timeline on that was next year, or
Also, will you-
hearing that and then actually being in the budget? I couldn't get that question in before we voted on it, so it's already done now, but
Realistically, if it's approved, it'll go through the MPO processes, and then we could activate the project sometime next year. I would love to have this thing done in 12 months, but it's probably like a 3-year outlook to
Okay,
actually get it
thanks.
completed.
So we'll talk about the possibility of, hopefully, the possibility of funding the match money in the next budget.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Austin, you want to talk about setting the public hearing on item 19?
Yes, sir, real quick. We've gotten some revisions based on the feedback from the board at the food truck ordinance. And so I'd like to open this up for public comment on December 20th. And so to get the board to schedule that public hearing and then to allow me to broadcast on social media for some feedback for that meeting of the food truck ordinance. And so I'd like to request to set the public hearing for December 20th.
Make that motion.
Second.
A motion and a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. So I want to make clear to any public that's watching that this will be the public hearing set for December 20th. And between now and then, you can talk to Austin's office, talk to any of these board members, talk to me. We still don't feel like we've got enough public input, so we want as much as we can before December 20th or on December 20th at that public hearing.
Austin, have we got any public input?
Very little. I think two folks have come to office just to talk about
Kind
it.
of like the parks plan, there's nothing. To get that in there.
Okay, we'll move on to item 20 is the approval
Get
of
it
surplus the parks equipment listed there.
Make a motion to approve to surplus.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. Item 21 is the approval to have Strayhorn Trucking and Construction remove the surplus bleachers at Kirkendall Park down to dirt and dispose of all scrap metal and trash. All work will be done at no charge to the city.
Isn't there a discussion about getting some from South Haven to fill in, or some used ones or something?
Would you like to come up and speak to that, Jared?
Just so people have a place to sit, I guess.
Yeah, so the soccer complex over on State Line from South Haven have 6 bleachers. They're small bleachers that they're looking to surplus, asked us if we wanted them. The only use we would even have for them would to be put there. They're pretty short. They're about 5 rows. So we could put them there if y'all want them there for somebody to sit. I'm not sure how, after looking at them today, I'm not sure how useful they would be. It's like seeing over the fence onto a football field, but we could certainly try, and if they don't work out, then we can surplus them ourselves.
Is there a motion on that item?
So made.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes.
Thank you.
Good.
It'll be a sad day.
I'll make a motion to approve the maintenance bonds for Montclair subdivision 2, 3, and 4.
Joe?
We've been asked to table that for next
All right.
meeting.
Yeah.
Cancel that.
All right.
Resident out there, what exactly we talked about.
Okay. Alderman Wicker has withdrawn his motion. Can we just have a motion to table this to the next meeting?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. Next are the utility adjustments.
Motion to approve the utility docket.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion passes. Next will be executive session. I need a motion for a determination to go into executive session regarding public works personnel.
Motion.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. And that motion passes.